Inn and Conference Center at 400 Lodge Road in Buchanan, Tennessee, and notice of this board meeting was posted on the board website on September 26th of 2016. May we have roll call?
Susan Ballard.
Here.
Robert Campbell.
Here.
Philip Lim.
Yes.
Susan Maynor.
Here.
Blair Parker.
Here.
Rick Thompson.
Here.
Frank Wagster.
Here.
Kathy Ware.
Here.
Ricky Bersai.
Here.
Stephen King.
Here.
Laura Reinbold.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any guests. Everybody here's our regular folks. However, yeah, Casey and Tom and Nathan, would you all please let us know you're here?
Here.
Stand up.
Casey Anderson.
Thank you for the record. John, do you have any announcements?
Well, I do need to tell you that the state architect, Peter Heimbach, he should be here around 9 o'clock. That's what he had indicated to me. So if you're wondering why he's not here right now, he's on his way, so he should be here by 9 o'clock or so. Also, just to announce that Stephen King has been reappointed to the board. I received official notification of that recently. Congratulations. Also, we have a new architect member, Jerry Headley, unfortunately, was not reappointed. So Mr. Brian Tibbs of Moody Nolan in Nashville has been appointed to the Middle Tennessee architect position in his place. And also Kathy Ware has been appointed to Mr. Balford's position, the Middle Tennessee engineer board member position. So I want to recognize them as well. And that's all I have.
Okay. We'll move on to review agenda for changes and or additions. Are there any changes to our agenda? Yes. Okay. Steven's going to take care of Kathy. Since there are no visitors, do we have an open forum or shall we just move forward? Okay, we'll move on then. John, will you start our consent agenda?
Yes, on page 137 on your iPads, you have minutes from the August 2016 board meeting for your review and approval.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Move on to staff complaints.
And that's on page 150 on your iPads. Complaints for board decision, just 3 this month. These are all complaints in which the respondent was disciplined in another jurisdiction. The discipline was less than a suspension or revocation. So in accordance with board policy, we issued a letter of caution and recommend closure.
Do I hear a motion that we accept the consent agenda on the complaints for the board?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, moving on to professional society reports.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Casey Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Tennessee and the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers. Ashley covered several of the things that we've been working on together yesterday, so I'll just update you on a couple other things. Last month we had our Tennessee Engineers Conference for 3 days at the Music City Center. We had about 600 people come through, which was great. This year it was a joint effort between ACEC, TSPE, ASCE, and we added the Structural Engineers Association in this year, so it was a good event. Appreciate Robert and John did a panel on QBS that was well received. Laura and Hal and I, along with Larry Ridland, did another panel on decoupling. So we'll continue to beat that horse until we come up with a solution. And it was good to just have new people in the conversation and bring them to kind of a wider audience. It was helpful. On the QBS front, ACEC's Business Practices Committee is putting together some materials, educational materials, both to use with some of the, we're trying to get in with some of the nonprofit associations that are like that represent municipalities and the water systems and a lot of those public entities to start that education the way we did several years ago when this was sort of a newer when some of the changes first went into place. We're also putting together some materials to help our members in the procurement process and what they're looking for. Because what we've discovered is a lot of our younger members, when they're young in their firms, it's sort of like you're in the headlights a little bit, and so sometimes it takes a while before things rise to the point of someone who sees, who recognizes the issues before they call us. So we're going to try to go on a big educational front along those lines. Legislatively this year, transportation infrastructure funding is going to be a big focus for us. It will affect every business in Tennessee. We know that, or we anticipate anyway, that we'll have a ton of other issues that will come up. But right now we're just keeping an eye out for all of that. We have recognized the new PEs at dinners around the state. Kathy was nice enough to speak on with a group at the Nashville dinner on professionalism, and it was unbelievably well received. And just did such an outstanding job of the importance of licensure and what your ethical responsibilities are, and that the world is in your hands.
You are the future.
Yeah, Kathy. It was like one of those. Okay. But it's been really nice to see that across the state. We are kicking off a new season of math counts and Lego League and some of those STEM activities that we do all over the state. And we have in December, if anyone's looking to fill in their PDH requirements prior to if you want to jump in on the calendar to your thing real quick, we've got seminars, morning and afternoon sessions in Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, November 30th, December 1st, and 2nd. So I think that's all I know, unless you all have questions. Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Don Baltimore, General Counsel and Lobbyist for Tennessee IDEA, which is Tennessee Interior Design Education and Advocacy Association, which of course represents the interior designers in the state of Tennessee. And I don't have a lot to report, but it is interesting and important. We had the American Society of Interior Designers state convention last month in Nashville, where there were a day and a half of socializing, but CEUs for these professional interior designers to maintain their registration. Also, Tennessee IDEA has started a new award that we are going to start giving out in May of 2017. It's called SLANT, which is Student Leader Award for NCIDQ tuition. And what we will do is pay the first portion of the test fee for the deserving students so that they can become NCIDQ certified, which means they then become a registered interior designer. Also, October, as it has been in the past, has been declared by the governor to be Interior Design Awareness Month, which is appropriate since this is Fire Safety Month, too, and the governor recognized, as in the past, that professional interior designers do affect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Tennessee, and that he was acknowledging that through the proclamation. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Ridley. I represent the Tennessee chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. There's a common theme here. We're just bouncing off our annual meeting twos in Memphis, Tennessee. It's a wonderful opportunity, as others have mentioned, for continuing education credits. We have a nice presentation for the dean, the assistant dean of the law school that's over the master's program at the University of Tennessee. Tennessee in Knoxville is the largest number of applicants they've ever had this year. So we were tickled about that. Sometimes have a little it's a brand new program. All y'all that don't know, I think we're maybe in year from layer 5 or 6. So it's a little gem up there at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. We're trying to nourish and cherish it and take good care of it. The programming is always, for a country lawyer, the programming of those events are always fun to me. They had a wonderful tour of Shelby Farms, y'all know, talk about a jewel in Shelby County that you have. And also, we got a sneak preview. There's a brand new pedestrian bridge over the Mississippi River, over the old handrail railroad bridge. It is spectacular. If any of y'all in West End to walk over the Mississippi River, you got to do it. You just got to do it. That was fun. We have a pesky, if any of y'all have been living in a cave, we have a pesky election coming up. Y'all are opinion leaders. All of y'all are opinion leaders. Not that anyone's counting, but we're 31 days out from the election. The deadline to register all of your employees to build that culture of engagement in your firms is Tuesday. And you can get the form. You can't register online, but you can get the form online. And you build a culture of engagement, and that makes all of our work easier for the design community. It's all elected officials pay attention to. That's why I always harp on this so much. So early voting starts on the 20th in your counties, and you have to check. It varies, and then election day will be November the 8th. And there'll be a big turnout, so I encourage people to go vote early. I'm old, but there's something satisfying about standing in line with your neighbors to go into the vote. But if you're into efficiency, vote early. The workers are better, and it just goes faster. The legislative session starts on January the 10th. As Casey mentioned, transportation funding. The sad part about it, I don't think there's a lot of conversation about it in the legislative campaigns. Nobody's running on, I'm going to support infrastructure funding ticket. But we got to do it. It wasn't the Engineers Society, it was the Road Builders Association. One year they had a button that said 1989 question mark. It's the last time we increased the fuel tax. And think we saw those little books in the bookstore last night about the years, and think what you could buy in 1989 and purchase it if I were that. So probably the partisan break for our legislative friends will be about the same. We're going to be all Republican all the time. We will have a new speaker in the Senate. The new speaker in the Senate is going to be, we won't know until they elect him, but the odds are in favor right now is Randy McNow. He's the longest serving member of our Senate, so he brings a little gray hair to the process, and also the chair of the Finance Committee. And that session will start in January the 10th. And if y'all don't know your state reps, you should. If you don't want to meet somebody the first time, then ask them for something. That's just a difficult conversation. Hello, my name's Nathan Ridley. I'd like for you to do this for my clients. That doesn't go well. It's better, oh, hi, Nathan. It's so good to see you again. What may I help you with? That's what you want to hear instead of what the hell do you want? You have to make yourself friendly, and that's why it's so important when the societies do those legislative days on the Hill. I encourage folks to do those, but the best time to go talk to them is right now. They're so much more comfortable in their districts, and you're on their turf. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. You can go to Starbucks, have a cup of coffee, you can go, share a sandwich with you, can run by your office, or just talk to you a minute on the phone. I'm a design professional, I'm an engineer, I'm an architect, and this is what we do that's so important. Because and what I'm trying to get to, sometimes there's a theme. There's a little thread for our Republican friends of what they call it barriers to doing business. So they don't like, for some people, to be licensed. And I don't think they'll pick on any of the groups that are regulated with this board, but it's out there. Like, well, okay, really, all of your guys, they just plant flowers. Anybody can do that. Why do you have to have a master's degree and a license to do that? And I go, well, first of all, I know a lot more than plant flowers, and let me tell you, it's a 3-year master's program. And they got to know that. Every legislator is about this wide and about that deep on every issue. So y'all can be subject matter experts. I'll talk to you or something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Benjamin, would you like to present our legal case report?
I would love to. I will point out there's one error. The subject is incorrect. It should read October legal report. This morning we have 3 matters to present.
Page 151.
Is everybody on paper? 3 matters to present. The first is representation come before the board once or twice. I'll read the previous legal report and then the updated one on the second page. Allegations of incompetence for plans for church facilities. Reviewer expressed concerns of incompetence concerning the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical plans that were prepared. Respondent also has sheets with unsigned seals. In his response, respondent states that this was a design build with the contractor and the owner. Respondent recounts discussions with the contractor that when changes in the plans came up, he would discuss it with the contractor. Once a decision was reached, the contractor stated that he would take care of it. The respondent did not create revised drawings for follow-up. At one point, the respondent states that I concluded he, as in the contractor, didn't need me anymore, so I put the work aside. The respondent also states that he lost several versions of plans due to computer issues. The building at issue has been completed, inspected, and issued a certificate of occupancy. This particular respondent had received a letter of caution in 2013. Mr. Versailles reviewed this particular complaint. The previous recommendation was to discuss 2 potential violations of unsigned seals and incompetence. The previous action taken by the board was a authorization of consent order with $9,250 penalty to take the laws and rules exam within 30 days of execution of this consent order. New report. Council represented this matter to the board at August 2016 meeting with an offer from the respondent to sign an amended consent order. The board rejected this offer and asserted that the best interest would be to keep the respondent from practicing in Tennessee ever again. The legal and full respondent counsel of the board's rejection of the offer. The respondent's counsel stated the respondent is willing to surrender the respondent's license and never seek a Tennessee engineering license ever again. Our recommendation is to close the complaint upon the surrender of the respondent's engineering license with an agreement to never seek a Tennessee registration ever again. And we have drafted such an agreement. It's just a single page. It's pretty straightforward. We can use from a different board.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor to accept this recommendation from legal counsel? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The second and third cases are very similar. The second, case number 2016-049-131, on or about August 18, 2016, board staff opened a complaint against the respondent for practicing on an expired registration. The respondent's registration expired on July 31st, 2016. On August 15, 2016, the respondent realized the registration was expired, immediately went online and renewed the registration and self-reported that the respondent sealed set of plans on August 1st, 2016. The respondent was apologetic and provided the names of the projects. The respondent sealed while the registration was expired. The respondent printed new sets of drawings with initials and seals after reactivating the respondent's registration. There's no history of disciplinary action against this respondent. Legal's recommendations to consent order with a $100 civil penalty to take and pass the laws and rules exam within 90 days of the execution of the consent order.
Okay, for case number 2, do we have a motion to accept legal counsel's recommendation?
I think I reviewed this when I reviewed the application. I think I reviewed the one that I need.
You may have, yeah.
If it is, I probably should recuse myself.
If you're sure as to any of it, I wouldn't use yourself for both of them. Just say.
Because I reviewed one of these dates in there, so I probably should.
I think his registration's been issued, so it has been reviewed and approved by the application has been.
Right, and I think I remember this one. So
Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay, do we have a motion from the floor to accept the recommendation of legal counsel?
So moved.
And a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Third and final case in legal report, case number 2016-053-641, on or about September 29, 2016, board staff opened a complaint against the respondent for practicing on an expired registration. The respondent's registration expired on June 30th, 2015. On August 3rd, 2016, respondent realized that the registration was expired, reapply for registration and self-reported, responded sealed 4 sets of plans since the expiration of the registration. Responded was apologetic, provided the names of the projects, responded sealed while their registration was expired. There's no history of disciplinary action against this respondent. Legal's recommendation is consent order with a $500 civil penalty and taking past the laws and rule exam within 90 days of the execution of the consent order.
Again, I'll recuse myself. I know I reviewed one of these, and I'm not sure which one it was.
Okay, thank you, Lord. Do we have a motion on the floor to accept the recommendation of legal counsel? Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
And John, the complaint report?
Well, before I get to that, I have a few other items to go over.
Okay.
Director's report. Regarding national council meetings, I did attend the NCAAS annual meeting in Indianapolis in August and was accompanied by 4 engineer members and also our attorney Benjamin. Also attended the NCAR MBE committee meeting. That's the Member Board Executives Committee meeting in Washington, D.C. In September. That's the committee that I'm chairing for NCAR. Blair Parker and I attended the CLARB annual meeting in Philadelphia on September 22nd to 24th. Rick Thompson and I will attend the NCAR Member Board Chairs, Member Board Executives Summit in Columbus, Ohio at the end of this month, October 28th and 29th. And Susan Ballard and I may attend the CIDQ annual meeting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida next month, November 11th and 12th, but we're not sure if that's taking place.
Susan got a report from a friend that they did okay.
Okay. So hopefully we'll still be meeting.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see. All right. So a lot of National Council activity this time of year. This is always one of my busiest times of the year in the fall. It's late summer. So been very active on that front. Also with outreach efforts, it's already been mentioned, Robert Campbell and I spoke about QBS at the Tennessee Engineers Conference. Hal Balthrop and Laura Reinbold also participated in a decoupling panel discussion at that meeting. I have received an invitation to speak to the Lipscomb University Senior Engineering Design class on November 10th, and I think Mr. Lim has offered to assist me in that, to participate in that event. And Philip Lim is going to serve as the board observer at the UT Martin ABET accreditation visit later this month. So he's going to participate in that. Also, just to update you on some administrative issues, we're continuing to put more of our applications online through our new licensing system, core.tn.gov. It's where you go to renew your license, but you'll also be able to apply for a license there as well. And we've had the comity applications out there for some time. We're in the process of getting all the reapplications out there, as well as the exam applications. And engineer interns are out there as well, and interior designers. So we're slowly getting all of those rolled out. We haven't publicized that fact yet, so we haven't had a lot come in that way, although we've gotten a few. Because as people are calling in about applying, we tell them that they can do it online. So we've gotten a few just to test the system. That was the plan, that it would be a soft launch of the system, so we could debug it before we had a lot of people using the system. So I think that's working pretty effectively. So hopefully very soon we'll actually publicize the fact that this is available. And most of our applications, I would anticipate, will be coming in online instead of through paper. I also want to let you know that the parking situation for board meetings is changing. You're all going to get state photo IDs now, like staff possess. Yeah. So that because the state parking garage near our building that you're using, pretty soon they're going to activate the gates at the entrances to the garage, where you'll have to scan your ID to get inside the garage. So for that reason, at the next meeting in December, somebody's going to be taking the picture and issuing you a state photo ID that you'll use to get into the parking garage in the future. So I want to make you aware of that.
Use that anytime, anywhere.
I think so, yeah. Anytime you need to come to our building, just park in that garage. Or anytime you want to come downtown for a sounds game. I'm not sure how that works.
The perks.
Yeah, you have little perks. That's right. It's kind of funny because years ago we always gave board members IDs. You may remember, Rick.
No, we just had the card. We didn't have a picture ID.
Maybe not. Okay, it was before your time even.
Okay.
Years ago, y'all board members were given
Back in the
photo
40s.
IDs. And then they quit doing it. Yeah, they quit doing it. Now we're back to that again.
Does it work to get in the building too, or do we still have to sign in?
Yeah, you will. I think you can just use it to get in. You won't have to. Yeah, you can just scan when you come in the building. You won't have to sign in. That'll save you a little time. Definitely. Also, I mentioned this, and I think at the engineer committee meeting, we've purchased some additional licenses for Adobe Professional for board staff, so that we can start. Especially with online applications, we need this because we get the online application, then references come in separately, and the transcript comes in separately, and we needed a way that we can combine all of that into one file to make it easy for you to review applications, the ones that we have to send out for review. So we're going to do some training on that. We can start highlighting and putting notes on there and all kinds of neat stuff. So that should facilitate the review process for you. And also, just one legislative update real quick. I did receive a follow-up email this week from Senator Brian Kelsey's office regarding the reintroduction of the bill that allows persons holding a master's degree in engineering to qualify for engineer registration. You'll remember I mentioned that at the August meeting that I had been contacted about that. So one of the applicants that has been denied registration, he has a technology degree and a master's degree in engineering, is requesting this through Senator Brian Kelsey's
They called you
office.
back about it again?
Yes. They had some staff turnover in Senator Kelsey's office. So the person that had contacted me previously left, and now they've got a new person, and he's following up with me
Did
about
they
it.
indicate they were going to help you
No, nothing yet. Right now they're just exploring the issue. They've just contacted us to get some background information about it. So just want to make you aware of that, because I know that was a bill of concern to the engineers and the societies in the past. So it may be coming back in the spring. We don't know at this point. Okay, that's it for that part. Now the complaint data. That's on page 154. And this just gives you a snapshot of our open complaints as of September 28th. Some of these were presented today, obviously, or have since been closed. But you'll see at the bottom some statistics that we don't have any that are over 180 days without clock stopping action. And clock stopping action, for the benefit of our new member, that would be like the issuance of a consent order, or scheduling a formal hearing, or something of that nature that stops the clock from calculating the number of days that a complaint has been open. Our department's goal is to have all complaints, have clock stopping action on all complaints within 180 days. So at least have a consent order issued or something, so that to show it's been presented to the board and action has been taken. And we don't have any that are in the hopper to be scheduled for a formal hearing at this point. And our percent on time in the last 18 months is 96.67%, which is well above the department's goal for rec board programs. So we're doing good there. And the next page, you do have some statistics on the number of registrants and firms, just for your information. I think you'll see our registration numbers have been overall pretty steady for the most part. A little bit down from October last year, but it's just, we've seen natural fluctuation, largely due to the professional privilege tax. You always have a lot that drop their license around that time. That's why I'm really hopeful that maybe the legislatures will abolish the tax at some point, because I think that's going to help our registration numbers, especially with out-of-state registrants. They're the ones that are always going inactive or canceling their license when they get the bill from revenue. So that will help us for sure. If that's so.
I've got 2 calls from the study committee, so they are actually functioning.
Good. Okay. Yeah, this is being studied by the Tennessee Advisory Council on Intergovernmental Relations, right? That a bill passed this year to charge them with studying possible elimination or phasing out of privilege tax. So I have high hopes for that. I'm not sure. I don't know what will happen.
But if they do, there's nothing but might be some expenses. So I mean, if you take away the revenue from the service.
Well, we don't see the revenue.
But somebody does.
Well, yeah, it goes in the general fund.
So you're going to give every school teacher a pay cut?
It's a revenue. It is a revenue reduction for the state, right? But we have a surplus now, so yeah. So yeah, that'll be a big consideration. Obviously, it would have a big financial impact, obviously, on the state. But I digress. Page 156. These are applications reviewed and approved over the last year. At the bottom, you'll see the totals for exam versus comedy. Oh, financial data, yes. I almost forgot. Page 48, you got to go way back on your iPads for that. The costs, that was discussed by the Finance Committee yesterday. That's on page 48. And just to give you some highlights of that, certainly the Finance Committee, Mr. Lynn's the chair. If they want to make comments, they're free to. For revenue, we did see a decline versus the same quarter last year, but as I've said previously, we sent out those early renewal notices last year in anticipation the debut of our new licensing system. We wanted people to renew early, so for that reason we had a big jump in revenue last fiscal year and a corresponding drop in revenue as a result this fiscal year. So there's nothing alarming about that. We expect it to normalize next year. Expenses did decrease quite a bit, but that's because all of our grant money was issued last quarter this year. Previous fiscal year, it was distributed over 2 quarters. So for that reason, we spent more in the 4th quarter last year than we did this year because of the grants money. But our other expenses remain largely consistent with last year. And we will have a final report for fiscal year 2016 at the next meeting. It wasn't available. Our accountant in the division is still verifying the information, so it's not available yet, but I should have it by the December meeting, and as well as the report for the 1st quarter of the current fiscal year, which will be July through September. And again, this is just for your information. You don't have to vote on it. That's all I have, unless you have questions.
Anyone have questions for John? Okay. Since Peter is not quite here yet, do we want to move on to action items?
And that is on page 157. And I just noticed this list differs a little bit from the one that I sent you earlier. It's been edited slightly, and some things were moved around inadvertently. But for things under my name, as I've reported in previous committee meetings, I am going to invite someone from the Association of Energy Engineers again to attend a future engineer committee meeting. Had trouble getting in touch with me, but hopefully that we can do that by December. Of course, Peter Heimbach is going to be here today. He had requested to come to the October meeting instead of the December meeting. Of course, we have sent out requests for grant proposals, and the due date for those is October 28th. And also, under legal counsel, there's a couple of items that should not be there. One, they got moved under legal counsel. One is the update on the reference manual, and I reported this to the Publications Committee yesterday, that it's still under review within the department. That's why we haven't publicized the revisions we made in December. Right now, it's being reviewed by the Fire Prevention Division. They wanted to take a look at it. So after all the authorities have reviewed it, at that point, they may request that we make some revisions. If so, then we'll proceed with those. If not, then we can, I'm assuming we can probably publicize it at that point. So that's still under review. Let's see, and of course, Mr. Bursai had a couple of items that have been addressed. If you want to mention anything about that, Rick? No, that was handled yesterday, obviously. Right. So, and then we had there's really just those last two bullet points under legal counsel that I guess Ben could report on if you want to about the mutual recognition.
Well, the whole thing, obviously, as you said, once reference manual is reviewed by other administrative agencies and it's going to come to legal, we're going to do a comprehensive review of the entire thing. With regard to the opinion of the submission of historical data and hourly rates in response to an RFQ, there's a draft memorandum I actually have it with me. It has not been, it's currently, I believe, in the Deputy General Counsel's hands. Might even be approved at this point. They've been in office for 2 days. The mutual recognition arrangement, I believe we said before, it's legal's opinion that you do have the authority to enter into this, and our advice not to enter into it because it removes some discretionary powers of the board. But we certainly understand why you might enter into it. And the last thing, we draft proposed rule changes. We would discuss this in the Laws and Rules Committee. We already have language for many of the proposals drafted, and we will be updating this for a full package until the December meeting.
John, do you have anything else?
No, that's it for action items.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Peter, would you like to?
Just in time. Yeah, 10 minutes earlier.
Well, I didn't know if you needed 10 more minutes or if we want to take a 10-minute break, so thought I'd ask you first.
Whichever way you want to. If you want to take a 10-minute break,
Everybody good?
it's fine.
Did you get your stuff taken care of? Okay, great. All right, this time we'd like to introduce Peter Humbach. He is our state architect, and he's going to present what's in his hand.
Does anybody need a copy of the handout?
I do.
Okay, I've still got a few extras.
Peter, would you like for the board to introduce themselves?
That'd be fine, whichever
Okay.
way they prefer.
Okay. Zach, would you start, please?
I'm Zachary Nation, I'm the paralegal.
Benjamin Glover, the Assistant General Counsel.
Philip Bloom, engineering business. Ricky Bursai, West Tennessee
Laura Reinhold, Middle Tennessee Associate.
Robert Campbell, East Tennessee.
Frank Wexler, West Tennessee Board.
Susan Deller, Interior Design Board.
Steve King, East Tennessee Associate.
Kathy Ware, Middle Tennessee Engineering Member.
Blair Parker, Landscape Architect, West Tennessee.
Susan Maynard, Public Member, West Tennessee.
Wanda Garner, board staff.
Wanda Phillips, Board Staff.
John Compton, Executive Group.
Great. And I know Rick, I know he just left the room too. So. Well, I appreciate getting the time to talk to you all this morning. This is something that we've been wrestling with for about 4 years now because, as I'm sure you all know, the QBS statute changed in 2012 when the Central Procurement Office statutes were updated. And prior to 2012, the state participated in QBS, but technically by the statute was exempt. The statute itself required qualification-based selection of municipalities and other subdivisions of the state, but it did not require it of the state. when it was updated in 2012, it added the state. So we took a very hard look at it, and at the same time, we were also working on contract negotiations with the architects and engineers. And also at the same time, or right beforehand, I believe the board had made a rule change to help out the architects and engineers from municipalities that were trying to manipulate the QBS statute to require them to either solicit or include rates in their qualification statements, either blatantly or in a sealed envelope. And the board issued a new rule that basically said that architects and engineers were not allowed to do that, but that would be considered a violation of the rule if they participated. And I was actually on the private side working with AIA when that rule was first discussed and proposed. And so what we started looking at was exactly how the state participates in qualifications-based selection. And I think John and I actually met on this once, 3 or 4 years ago, to discuss some of the issues that we were running into. The way the state does qualification, first of all, the way the statute proposes qualification-based selection is through, first you solicit purely for qualifications, and after the qualifications are ranked, then the owner, the municipality, the state, whoever, meets with the best qualified and then negotiates with the best qualified. If they can't reach an equitable negotiation with the best qualified, they move to the second best qualified. The state, because we have over 300 projects a year, really doesn't have a good way to negotiate with each individual designer. So what the state has traditionally done is had a fee schedule. And the fee schedule correlates to a list of basic services and basic consultants. And the state has, within its additional services in its contract, both the old contract and the new contract, further clarified a list of services that are in addition to the basic services. And so what we do is tell the designers what the project is. We have expectation of basic services being performed for that project. And then we have some multipliers that allow the markup of the fees to accommodate certain pieces. So there is no fee negotiation side on this unless there is additional services. What we started seeing happen even before the QBS statute changed and even before we started negotiating contracts was designers, in an attempt to appear more qualified, they would add the consultants into their qualifications response, that the unwritten expectation would be that those additional consultants would be paid additional for. When the state was not subject to absolutely doing qualifications-based selection, there wasn't really an issue there. There kind of was. It was an issue of equity, not an issue of abiding by the statute. Because what that does is if the state has the fee schedule out there and says we're going to pay you whatever 6% for this project, and here's the project, then everybody's competing on a level playing field, and they are providing a list of qualifications for the basic services. Where it got tricky was if there was a project like a theater or an auditorium or other items like that, and the state was just looking for the basic services, the basic fee schedule, a designer could put in an auditorium consultant or a theater consultant or an acoustical consultant or a specialized HVAC consultant or any of these consultants and appear more qualified than than their peers, their competitors, and they would get the project and then immediately turn around and say, well, we need additional services for this project. We even had it to the extent before the contract changed that we had a couple of designers propose geotechnical consulting services and surveying services, which are not included in the QBS statute because they are not registrants from this board. And when we asked them for a quote for surveying, they said, oh, no, we don't have to provide a quote for surveying. We have the surveyor included in our package, so we already have the surveyor. And we said, no, surveying is a service that has to be priced. It's cost-based. And they said, well, no, I include it in my qualifications. We said, okay, well, if you include it in your qualifications, then it's part of your fee. They said, oh, no, we get extra for that too. So we said, no, if you get extra for it, it's not included in your fee, and it's not part of your qualifications. You have to bid those services. So this went back and forth. So what we sought to do, and what we're still seeking to do, and we're working this out, is make 3 clear lines of distinction between how we procure services. The first path is going down the traditional method. We are just procuring basic services. So if there are any additional services in that, the expectation of the state is that those will be dealt with separately. That we will work those out after the contract is signed. They're not part of the qualifications. They're not part of the fee. And that way it keeps the playing field level. The second path and the third path are ones that more follow the way the statute envisions, which is we will either have a fee multiplier that might be 10, 20, 30% increase in the fee, and thereby we are expecting a higher service, more qualifications, and it allows the designer to provide a response back that is along the same lines of including additional services in that marked up fee. And so it allows the designers to put in those consultants that are specialty consultants, such as an auditorium consultant or a theatrical consultant or acoustical consultant or specialized mechanical consultant. Any of those would be included in that basic fee, but everybody knows that. So it's a level playing field, and again, everybody is just competing on qualifications rather than the fee coming into play. The third path is a true negotiated path. We haven't done any of those yet, but the expectation is that we would use the fee structure and some multipliers to the fee structure as our basis of negotiations, and assume that the designers would do that as well. But that would actually allow us on a certain number of projects, particularly the larger projects and the ones that actually have specializations, to negotiate the fee. Our concern of going down that path too often is, again, we have over 300 projects a year. Not sure who would negotiate all of those projects to keep the equitability of the negotiations fairly level across the state, because we don't want to run into a situation where we have a project in Knoxville where the architect happens to be a really good negotiator and the state project manager is not, and then we have a project in Memphis where the architect is not a good negotiator and the state project manager is a real bulldog, and we get a disequity between those two projects, because then we're going to have Casey and her cohort, Ashley, on the AIA side coming talk to us and say, wait a second, this isn't working between different sides of the state. So we're trying to keep all of those pieces into balance. The things that we're still running into, and we're dealing with this, we just dealt with it with the University of Tennessee on 2 projects that they've had since June. The first one was the West Campus dining hall, the one that's associated with UT Knoxville, with their complete redevelopment of Presidential Courtyard. They stated in there, and the way that UT has been kind of trying to needle this, is to put in there that we may consider additional consultants. And so what we've talked to UT about is that the mere suggestion of what might be considered as favoring you better in the idea or in the eyes of an evaluator could be construed as talking about fee. Because if we have a set fee, the service is supposed to equal the fee. And we all know that you can't propose the fee on the front end before qualifications. But if the fee is set by proposing additional services for that fee, you're doing what we've come to call reverse fee thinking. You're trying to pack in as much as you can to make you look better from a financial standpoint rather than from a qualification standpoint. And this has gotten extremely muddy because it's a hard concept to understand if you don't understand qualifications-based selection. So we've been working with UT, and there have been 2 so far, and we've gotten them to adjust their RFQ. And actually, right now we're using the my attorney and the Attorney General's office and the attorneys from UT and TBR and General Services to kind of work out some of the details. But I think we're on a good path there to limit the owner's side of suggesting or even requiring additional services from the designers. At the same time, we still do have designers that are proposing some additional services here and there, stacking their team, so to speak. And the thing that we're being actually asked by the designers to regulate that. And we don't feel that's our responsibility as the owner to regulate the respondents. We were asked at one point, would we kick out any respondents that included additional consultants in their qualifications proposal? My answer was simply no. I don't think that's our responsibility to do that. Because it's hard to tell when that truly crosses a line, or if there's a line, or if there's just a huge gray area between providing additional qualifications or additional team members to make up for gaps in your team versus truly stacking the deck so that your team looks really good. And then from the owner's perspective, do we really want to, we don't want to suggest that because that creates the inequity, but do we really want to regulate that? And so one of the things that I wanted to pose to you all today is, where is that fine line, and are you ready to discuss that fine line, or is it a huge gray area? Because I think what I've suggested to some of the design groups that I've discussed with and I did 5 seminars around the state with the help of Ashley and Casey to work out what some of the details of the contract were, and this came up a few times. And what I suggested was, if we've got, say, a high school or a college classroom building that has an auditorium in it, and the designer thinks that, having an acoustician on their staff or consultant help on this, and the state didn't ask for it, does that really constitute stacking the deck, or is it just something that makes sense for the project from one architect versus another architect? And then you have the far extreme of, you have a BSL level 3 lab or a full-blown performance theater that pretty much everybody would agree that you need a specialty consultant on that, and an architect or engineer provides those as part of their basic qualifications when the state chose Path 1. And so those 2 extremes are what we're kind of dealing with and wrestling with on where does that where does that fall in a violation of the statute from the state's perspective? Because the way that we have perceived it, the statute regulates the state or regulates the governmental owner. The rule regulates the registry. And so from the state's perspective, what we're trying to constrain is our suggesting that you could provide additional or in any way trying to unlevel the playing field. But we're being asked by the designers, how do we deal with our peers doing that anyway, even if we don't suggest it? And what I've suggested is that's back on the designers, the design community, and potentially this board. And so with that, I'll open, or I'll take any questions, or any way that you wish to have this with discussion or whatever.
This time, I think we need to defer to our staff attorney, Ben.
Are you wanting them to endorse this proposal?
Not necessarily. More at this time, from what John and I had talked about, this is just more of a conversation. If the board wanted to endorse it, we don't have a final, we're working on a final request for qualifications right now to adjust that to restrict the state. I think more of what I was looking for today was to open the discussion with the board. I've talked to Rick about it a few times. I've talked to John. Ricky and I have talked about it, in the contract negotiation side. But I wanted to have this conversation with the whole board and see where the feeling of the board was. Is the state doing enough to restrict its own actions? And then what do we do in the circumstances where we see designers pushing the limits of qualifications?
Well, two things. One, we do have the rule, as you all know, that so we can enforce things against our registrars. The problem is, I don't believe the board wants to start filing open records requests across all state entities in order to get all these things and start going on a witch hunt to track them. I mean, I don't know, but my guess is it's probably
I hope not.
Right, but unless someone files a complaint, there's no way for the board to take any action on anybody.
Right.
So, it would be on the registrants to have to report, turn each other in.
Right.
Two, I just got this at 5:45 last night. We're in Paris Landing, Tennessee, without strong internet or Westlaw. So it would be my recommendation that the board not endorse or take any action with regard to this until legal can take an additional look at it. The next few months.
That's why I said really right now I just wanted to open the discussion. It's something that we've been discussing with the architects and engineers for a year or two now, Stacey?
I've only been here a year and a half.
Okay.
Pretty much all we've done.
Yeah.
Okay, do I hear a motion at this time to review this and get back with him? We can't endorse anything without talking about it.
No, absolutely, and I don't expect any questions.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Rick?
Before we make any kind of a motion, I think for our behalf or our understanding at Peters, it's a little Q&A session here. We're not supporting or endorsing anything. But I just have a question about what you said about going into this new document you may be preparing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a timeline that we might expect to see something like that? Because until, like our legal staff has said, until we really understand, and I think that this is a confusing subject, until we have a better grasp, we're certainly not going to do a witch hunt.
Right.
That is not our function in the state. And like Ben said, if someone files a complaint, that's different. But a better understanding of how we might react to a complaint, is it legitimate or not legitimate, I think depends on this new document if it's approved. And I'm just not clear on how this is going to transpire. And if you could share a little more information on that, just for our education, I'd appreciate that.
Well, right now, and the document that we're talking about is we are talking about making, right now, each each of the three, what we call state procurement agencies, which are UT facilities, TBR facilities, and the Department of General Services. And it's going to grow dramatically in the next year as the Focus Act transpires, in that each of the 6 minor universities in the state will become their own procuring groups. So we will have 9 procuring groups in the state of Tennessee under the Building Commission. So what we are doing is we're taking the request for qualifications documents that UT, TBR, and General Services put out, and we're reviewing those and trying to amalgamate a single template document, not an actual document, that would be filled in with scope and specific things about the project. And with respect to QBS, what we're looking at is constraining what that document can be expanded to. Because what UT has done in both of the instances that I mentioned is in the section that asks for the team, we have a simple paragraph, and TBR and General Services just used the simple paragraph. What UT did was said at the end of that paragraph, team members may include, and then they list out architects, engineers, and then a series of consultants that are specific to the job. And that's where I've seen the response from architects and engineers go, wait a second. If you're going to suggest, even if it says may, and UT's argument is, well, we didn't say must include, so we're not reverse fee bidding. Well, you're suggesting that you could reverse fee bid. So that's almost as bad, not just as bad, and potentially worse, because it creates a disequity in that some of the designers might respond to that, other designers might resist that, and so we're trying to make sure that we, from our responsibility, keep the playing field level. So that's the document that we're working on. And what we did with UT was we had them in an addendum to that RFQ, pull that out and rewrite the 2 corresponding paragraphs. Even after that, I got a call from a designer that said, all right, now what do I do? Cat's out of the bag. We know what they're looking for, and I said, that's your decision now. I backed off the state and said, this is off the table. It's your business decision now how you want to handle it and whether you want to propose anything more. UT is not suggesting that and is definitely not requiring it at that point. But he was right. The cat's out of the bag once you do that. And that's what we're trying to prevent from our side is keep the cat in the bag. It's obvious when you look at a building, to some extent, depending on the scope, that there probably will be additional services required on certain pieces of it. The arguments that are being made back to me by the different agencies of the state is, what if one firm is a great generalist firm, and they do all kinds of work all over the state in a variety of project types, and they typically use a consultant to supplement their qualifications in it. And then you have another firm over here that all they do is theaters all over the country. How do those 2 firms compete against each other on a level playing field then? Because the one that does theaters all over the country has a theatrical specialist in-house. And they might not even ask for additional services, after the contract's signed, whereas in Firm A, obviously is going to. So even when you have that inequity there, if they simply mention that they've done theaters all over the country and they never use consultants because they've got everything in-house, they're obviously more qualified just on the basic piece, but also in the back of the evaluator's mind is, we're not going to have to pay any extra for a consultant for that firm because they've got them in-house. And so we're struggling with that part of it too. How do you truly keep this based on qualifications? Because little things like that can cause a disequity in the fee side from an evaluating firm. And being the state, we're looking at this much harder than any other municipality will, because we've got 300 plus projects a year, and we feel like we're held and should be held to a higher standard than the municipalities and counties around the state. But even with all of that, it still comes back to how the designers respond and making sure that the designers understand what they are allowed to and what are they're not allowed to respond. I've even cautioned some designers. They said, well, if I get something and I see that there's going to be consultants in there, how do I ask that question during the Q&A period during the qualifications? And what I've said to them is, first of all, don't say, we expect to have consultants in there, are you going to pay additional services? So that's discussing fee. Don't do that. What I said you could say is, this project appears to have some complexities outside of the basic services. How does the state plan on handling that? So put the responsibility back on the state, because the state can simply answer that by saying, we already have a consultant, don't worry about it, or we'll deal with that after the fact, after the contract's signed, and it takes the fee bidding side of it off the table. But again, it puts both the designers and the state that they have to be careful how they ask that question and how they answer that question, so that we don't violate the statute. It's making your head spin yet? It's making mine spin for the last couple of years.
Thank you, Vicki. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, Robert.
Peter, thank you very much for meeting, and I've got a better understanding. First time I really ever heard, we've met once before, I can't remember, but first time we as a board have heard some of this information together, so that's good. And just as a comment to everybody here, and we've talked some about it, I don't know how you ever really get rid of the bias of an evaluator on every level. You see a firm's name sometimes, and reputations precede or don't from time to time. So I think that's a difficult thing to totally get rid of bias. But the question I had more than anything is, what are you, when you look at these evaluations, is this a predominant thing where our registrants are adding additional, what you consider additional services to the basic service? I mean, is this every one you get is like this, or is this like every 50th you get?
We keep throwing around a stat that I think it's 5% of our projects are major, complex projects, and they make up 90% of the money that we spend on projects. It's that small number. It's that probably 2 to 5% of projects that we see this as a potential issue. But we did. I think the new contract and the tendency toward the new RFQ has gotten rid of some of the petty ones. We were seeing it from certain designers quite a bit, and it was a trend over probably 10 or more years of getting more and more competitive in trying to stack the deck on qualifications, provide more and more consultants. But it only reached a head because the statute changed. We were noticing that trend, though. That trend on everyday projects, to the best of what I've seen, has pretty much gone away. So it's really come down to the key, critical, larger projects, like the two that I mentioned with UT. The third one that we had somewhat of an issue with, but we corrected it before we put the RFQ out, was the University of Memphis quad land bridge parking garage connection, where they're extending the quad over the highway, and so they're building a bridge and connecting to a parking garage. TBR, to their credit on that one, called me before they released it, and they said, we can see this one's going to be have some issues with that. Let's talk about it. We rewrote the RFQ, and actually the one comment that I got on the RFQ was, where did this language come from? And it was one of the paragraphs that are in the third page that y'all have. And my response was, that was the language I worked out with A&E and ACEC, and they went, oh yeah, okay, no problem. So that one actually fixed itself because we were able to work with TBR before it came out. But to answer your question, it's a small number of projects, but it is the largest and most significant projects because they're the ones that, like the MTSU Science Building or the UT Dining Facility or Neyland Stadium, things like that are going to be the projects that are high profile, obviously require some additional consultants. But yeah, it's less than 2 to 5% of our projects.
Claire?
I'm relatively new to this discussion, so if this will be a very basic question. But as I understand what you're saying, and as I read this, and when a policy, when all this is resolved, in the end, who is it that polices, that says, no, we cannot, this is not by the rule. This is not, we cannot approve this, so we throw that team out or whatever. I mean, who is that? Is that not your office? Or if it's not your group, then where would it come?
The rule, I assume, it's this group.
It's us.
The statute.
So with that, then that would be, we as a profession of designers would be self-policing ourselves.
I mean, there's no obligation on anybody else. No, this rule only applies to registrants. I don't even know if I bet you 99.9% of the population doesn't even know exists.
Exactly.
So, I mean, when you're looking at individuals receiving these or the actual information from as a result of the RFQ, my guess is a lot of people, unless it's in your office, don't even know it's there. I mean, these entities probably, they're not looking, and then you've got to think, are they the ones that are going to want to or know to file a complaint with the board? Exactly. Because they could be shooting themselves in the foot because they might actually want this particular bid or whatever, But, absent a statutory change to make so many other individuals responsible to turn it over to us, then, I kind of stuck with what we got.
The interesting thing from an owner's perspective is when, be careful how I say this, from an owner's perspective, when registrants fee bid, it appears to benefit the owner because the owner is getting a lower cost. But the reason qualifications-based selection is in place is because the owner should be making a decision based on the quality of work they're going to get, not the cost of it. And it goes back to, I think it was Wally Schirra sitting on top of the Redstone rocket going, yeah, the only thing that was going through my mind was it was built by the lowest bidder. That's the kind of things that we're trying to prevent is not getting a registrant that is qualified to do that specific work. So we want to pick them so that they're the best qualified and then work out the cost after the fact. Again, the issue with the state is since we have so many, we have a fee schedule. And so the cost is worked out beforehand and it's a set cost. And then it's a matter of, well, let's stack as much money and as much services into that cost as we can get so we win the job. But on the statute, on the side of the statute, I've taken the perspective that we're the owner. It's our responsibility to police ourselves, and if we don't police ourselves, it's the responsibility of the registrants and the organizations that represent them to call us out on that. And if we don't respond correctly to that, to take it to whichever party is appropriate, whether it's the Claims Commission or the Attorney General's office or somebody to rein us in. So we're taking that side extremely seriously to make sure that we don't have any claims or action against us as an owner. But the regulation of the registrants compared to the rule, I think, falls to this board. And to something that was said earlier, y'all aren't expected to go out on a witch hunt. It's either other registrants or owners that are going to turn people into the board for violating the rule.
Thank you, Kathy.
I think you answered my question. Again, I'm new to this process, so preemptive apology if these are simplistic questions. But it sounds to me like you are strongly encouraging the AE community, the professional community, to comply with not just the letter of the law, but the intent.
Yes.
You're out there preaching to them, and you're saying, don't do this.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
All right, that's cool. That's great.
They're asking us to police that, and that's what
But
we're
you don't
pushing
have
back
that
from,
role.
saying no,
Right.
we can't police that.
Right. But your public position is you're telling these guys, hey, y'all need
Right.
to do this.
Now, in defense of the ACEC and AIA, they have a problem as well in policing this because they are not allowed to discuss amongst their members, because of federal antitrust laws, fees and how to set fees and how to do this. They can provide some informal guidance, but they can't instruct. And so we've tried to take on a little bit stronger role in doing that and providing some guidance and instruction, because they can't. They can get into federal antitrust law problems if they choose too much. Yeah. And having been a member of AIA and having gone through the 10-year antitrust action, it's not fun.
So my second question is, and you weren't here yesterday, we had a conversation relative to non-registrants who are participating in RFPs prior to becoming registered in the state. And this has a little bit of bearing on that conversation. So I'm curious as to, have you seen any trend that the additional services consultants that people are maybe packing into the basic services fee are coming from out of state because it's, like you said, an acoustical consultant or a parking garage consultant or a sports arena consultant, somebody, the expert from out of town? Are those the ones? Because that might help us understand some other issues.
We've had a couple of not solicitations, but questions prior to solicitations about when you have to be registered, and we've always answered those, that you have to be registered before you put in your proposal. We
That's not proposals, right?
There is no.
There's not a rule to that.
There's not a rule to that, but there may be a change to that rule. So.
Okay. Okay, I thought there was.
Again, I'm new. I was just asking.
We're going off.
Okay. But we've gotten some questions to that effect, and we've always answered that we're not going to accept it unless you're registered. If we can look up your number and you're registered, we'll accept your proposal. We do the same thing with contractors too.
Robert?
So, Benjamin, this is a question, and it's more, I think, on the complaint side, anybody can file a complaint. Right. So you could file a complaint against the registrants if they're violating, I mean, and that wasn't quite the vibe I got, and obviously it's up to us to police ourselves, but we would not have necessarily access to the information, or the registrant wouldn't know if somebody is doing this until after the fact. It's the same thing as the code petition, the first person to review a set of documents, and they're the ones that send that to us. So the building commission, the architect could file a complaint if this were being violated. And I just want to make sure we all understand that too. I mean, I think part of the complaint process is we only think that the code official is the only one that can file a complaint, where it can be another registrant, it can be a state architect, it can be a utility provider, it can be all these people, but we sometimes limit it to that. So I mean, I say that to say if there's an issue, I would hope that the state architect would have that same flexibility and freedom to understand that like the state fire marshal knows, that, you know, that opportunity is available to follow.
Are there any other questions or comments? Do you have anything else, Peter?
No, that was it. I
Okay.
appreciate the time, and let me know if you need any further conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Oh, wait. Yes, we're going to take a 10-minute. Oh, one, sorry, Laura. There was a motion. No.
There was a motion, there was a motion and a second, and then.
So we asked for discussion. Okay. Yes, let's repeat the motion.
I don't think the motion was made, it was suggested.
Okay.
I heard a motion and a second, and then Mr. Thompson said that one to ask some questions.
Okay.
Maybe I missed
But
it.
the motion was just for legal review. This is
Right.
Thanks. Thank you for reminding us.
Okay, whoever made the motion. Is that you? Okay. All right. I think I said, do we have a motion
Someone said so moved.
to let legal counsel review this information?
For clarity's sake, I'll make the motion to legal review, and report back to us at a future board meeting based on.
Okay, and we had a second.
I will second.
Is there any other
For
discussion?
clarity.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
One last comment. I'd like, Peter, thank you for coming today and helping clear this up, even though we're not quite clear yet, but appreciate your.
Clearer.
Yeah, clearer.
Yeah.
But-
Like I said, I didn't expect any action from the board today. I just more wanted to make sure that the board understood what our position was and that we are still moving forward.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute recess.
How you guys doing?
There's Steve. Steve's safe.
No objections, no objections.
You already know what Rick's got. Okay, John, can we reconvene? Let me go get coffee. Okay. All right, let's get started again. Our next item of interest is committee assignments, and I have my list right here. Do you want me to read how I've reassigned committees?
Sure.
Okay. All right. On the Architects Committee, we'll be adding Brian Tibbs in place of Jerome Headley. There are no changes to the Engineering Committee as listed. Ms. Catherine Ware is on here already. On the Interior Design Committee, since we had 2 members rotate off, Frank Wagster and Catherine Ware have volunteered to be on the Interior Design Committee. Basically, you're reviewing applications.
Teasing you.
Okay, under landscape architects, Blair, you have Frank Wagster and Robert Campbell. Is that still good? Okay. Grants to higher education. There are no changes to that committee at this time. You have Susan Ballard, Philip Lim, Blair Parker, Frank Wagster, and Susan Maynard. Under laws and rules and policies, Jerome Headley would be replaced by Brian Tibbs, and Rick Thompson has asked to remain to be chair. Under publications, Rick Thompson has asked to be removed, and Brian Tibbs will go in his place. Under licensure outreach, Stephen King, you still want to be chair? You've got to be chair, right? Frank Wagster, myself, and Blair Parker. Under nominations, we have Philip Lim, Rick Thompson, Susan Ballard, Philip Lim, and Blair Parker.
It's
Yeah,
quiet.
Gets 2 votes.
I don't know how that happened.
Oh, it is, yeah.
That's power. You get it. I vote for a power company.
Okay, so let's see. Who are we missing? We need an engineer. Another engineer? Or Kathy? Kathy?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we'll put you in the second Philip Lim position then.
I am honored.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, you know I have the same initial as KS. Mike Sue is KS Kathy's.
Under finance, we have Frank Wagster, Susan Ballard. No?
That's actually Philip Lim.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm sorry. Okay, under finance, we have Philip Lim as chair. Susan Ballard, Robert Campbell, and Rick Thompson. Then the last committee is continuing education. We have Frank Webster, Catherine Ware, Blair Parker, Susan Ballard, Susan Maynard, Ricky Versailles, and Laura Reinbold. Do I hear a motion to accept the committee assignments as presented?
Question.
Yes.
I know in the finance committee we had 2 engineers on it. One might mix and match.
Actually, we have 3 engineers on it. Is there a reason that we have this larger group on continuing education? John?
No, there's no set number of members for that committee, so you could reduce it if you want to.
Yeah, it's reverse.
Since Laura's chairman of the engineer committee, we'll take her off of continuing education.
Wait.
No, it's finance we're worried about. Put Brian on there.
I did notice that Brian.
The new Brian.
You said his name a lot.
Yeah, let's we've added him to 3 committees and he's not even here. So
He's at least being a little bit, and you got to take him off.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got law of rules.
we have you on laws and rules already.
I was trying to.
Brian, we're adding. Yeah. Brian, we're adding anyway. Okay. Any other discussion?
Philip, I drove there.
Can you go over it?
No.
Susan,
Yeah, I'll go over it one more time. Okay.
And you don't need a motion on this for the committee.
Okay.
The chair does that.
Okay. Under Architects Committee, we're adding Brian Tibbs in Jerry's place. Under Interior Design, Frank Webster and Catherine Ware have been added to replace the 2 members that rotated off. Under Laws and Rules, we're adding Brian Tibbs to Jerry Headley's position. Under Publications, we're adding Brian Tibbs to replace Rick Thompson. So that puts Brian on 3 committees without his knowledge. So, under nominations, we had a duplication of Philip's name, so Catherine Ware is going to take one of those positions. Under Finance, Philip Lim is the chair, not Frank Webster. And then under Continuing Education, Catherine Ware has taken Hal Balthrup's position, and Laura Reinbold has been asked to be removed since she is chair of engineering. Is that good? Okay.
So is Frank still on finance? He's just not chair.
Correct. No, he's not on. He's not on
He's not on
finance.
at all.
Unless you want to be. No. Okay. Yeah, we'll get a revised. So.
We're chopping it a bit.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions about the committee assignments? All right. Let's move on to proposed travel for 27, or authorization of travel and speakers, excuse me.
I think the only people that need authorization would be Philip and I to speak at Lipscomb. Next
You're
month.
not going to the observer.
Well, we've already done that.
This is the investment.
That's already been done, so we can do it again. That wouldn't hurt. Just for emphasis' sake. Yeah, Philip will be going to observe at UT Martin.
Oh, what 2030 is
23rd.
It's a Sunday also.
Okay. And then also we'll be speaking at Lipscomb on November 10th.
We have a motion to approve their travel.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other travel? Yeah. Catherine?
I have a question. When you're in an ACEC meeting, or TSPE meeting, or just a conglomeration of individuals, and they start talking about stuff, and then they say to you, they ask you a question, well, what do you think? What's the board going to say?
You cannot answer on behalf of the board. You can answer as yourself. And that's your statement. You cannot
so
answer.
you say that up front. You
say that up front.
I'm not speaking for the board.
You cannot speak for the board.
Unless the board has made a position.
And then
And authorize it.
Or all positions, yeah.
And if you have a question, you can call John. Or you call Ben. makes it a lot easier up front. Okay, is there any other travel that needs to be authorized, John? Okay. All right. Okay. 2017 proposed travel.
Yes, that's on page 159 on your iPads. Each year we develop a list of travel for the next calendar year with the estimated expenses for said travel. You do vote on this just to authorize these expenditures and this travel. Of course, it's still subject, each trip we have to submit a separate request. It's still subject, obviously, to the department's review, finance and administration's review, and the expenses. So just be aware of that. This is helpful just for planning purposes, budgeting purposes.
Do you really think we can go to Washington, D.C. for $3,000?
Which one was that?
When I went 10 years ago, my room was $450 a night.
Well, this is based on, the estimates are very much estimates based on past expenditures. So I would not, these are not exact numbers. It's based on usually estatements from the previous year for the trip. But yeah, it's going to vary depending on location.
Fort Lauderdale runs $189, and DC is not. DC is not going to be in that ballpark. So anyway.
Yeah, these are very much ballpark figures.
Okay. As long as we get trouble. Yeah.
But for the most part, it's consistent with what we've done in previous years, as far as the number of members and so forth. The only difference is with the NCAAS regional meeting in the Virgin Islands, as I discussed with the engineer committee. The assistant commissioner has requested that we not attend that meeting, with it being in a resort location outside the 48 contiguous states. He's worried about public perception issues with us being in attendance at that meeting. So I did not budget anything for that meeting. We can change that if you want to, but that's open to discussion.
There would be no budget anyway, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
To be clear, there would be no budget anyway. It's
Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, it would be funded by, you're right. It would be funded by NCAAS if we send 3. Yeah, no more than 3.
So they wouldn't allow us to send participants even though we're not paying for it?
Correct. Again, it's because it's public perception.
Okay.
It's not that money is not the issue. Money is not the issue because we have plenty of money to pay for travel, obviously, with our surplus. The issue is it's purely public perception.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple things for the record. And John, I appreciate what the assistant commissioner is saying. Let me start out by saying I think it's a very poor idea for our southern region to have decided to go to St. Thomas and Virgin Islands. I think that's extremely poor planning, and it's an extremely bad thing that they've done to their members by putting potentially not just Tennessee but other members in a position where they have to make decisions that are contrary to their ruling authorities, bodies. And I think that's an extremely poor thing and very selfish on a lot of people's part. If we want a suntan, we can go and sit outside the lake in the middle of summer. So I don't know why it has to be that. That being said, I think that these NCAAS Southern Zone meetings, oftentimes there will be something that comes up that may actually cost us, the state, and our registrants more money and time than sending one NCAAS funded delegate, which costs the state nothing but a little bit of perception. And I would just hope that either yourself or if we as a group need to kind of make that appeal. I don't mind that either, but at least one delegate to make sure that we don't get put behind the 8 ball on something that we as a state have a hard time. And again, it's not being paid for. I understand the perception, and my first comment was my comment. I think it's very important. But these meetings, somehow we need to have some access to what's going on in the meetings and some voice in the meeting, because sometimes just as they've made a poor decision with their location, they make other poor choices too that that we have to be there to try to corral some. And they're going to have a northeast zone, I think. And God only knows what that's going to look like. So anyway, that's my comment. And I wish that would be, relay that to the, again, I appreciate it, I got it, but I think we have to push back a little bit for our sake of our registrants and the public health, safety, and welfare as well. Sometimes that has to outweigh.
Philip?
With that saying, I would like the board to consider writing an executive director, right letter to Jerry Carter that why we not support simply for those very reasons. Because there's a perception that we will not participate. There was a period in time Tennessee did not work anywhere. So we were looked upon by the rest of the brothers and sisters who were connected forces. So I think we need to make that statement a lot clearer than ever, especially our concern. And we need to copy our assistant commissioner why we feel that we need to make a decision. That's my view. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I would just note that, yeah, there definitely was a time when there were a lot of travel restrictions in place, and that was a source of great frustration for the board. That has not been the case probably in the last 10 years or so. That's certainly not recent history. So I think the department has been very cooperative with us, with the board in recent years in allowing us to travel. We have increased the number of members that we send to meetings significantly since I became director in 2006. At one time when I first started, we were sending, I think one year to the NCAA's annual meeting, it was just me and Hal Balford. We were the only two in attendance. So we're sending a lot more members to meetings now. So this is an anomaly because it's in the Virgin Islands. It does not reflect a trend on the part of the department to reduce our travel. Their policies haven't changed on travel. So since they have been, I think, generous in allowing us to travel to meetings, my advice would be not to push back too hard on this. But that's just my 2 cents worth.
John, I think, you may be mistaken what I'm trying to say. I think we need to write a letter to Jerry Carter and tell him that the reason why we are not participating is just that we are just conservative.
Right.
I'm not pushing back our commissioner. I applaud.
But I wouldn't necessarily address it what you said, but or what Robert said.
The last person was me, so I thought you addressed it.
No, that was really
good. So do not confuse the fact that we have worked hard to get our administration to be confident in us, and I hope we'll leave a better trail for the people who take over. I know we got a lot of new members here, and I just think that we really was. And I think that we need to get the message back to NCAAs and say, hey guys, as much as you like to go somewhere, I like to go Hawaii too, but that's not an option. You work for the government. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes.
Yes.
If you don't attend these meetings, if we don't have representation at the meeting, is there a video conference option so that you can listen to deliberations and vote on any issues that come up remotely?
No, there's not.
There's not?
Generally, there's no voting at the zone meetings. There will be some votes for officer positions for, I think, zone vice president and assistant zone vice president at this meeting. But outside of officer elections, I don't think there's any voting to be done at the zone meeting. But there is no video conference option. But we are provided with the slides that are presented after all the meetings have taken place that present, basically the committee reports were provided with that information afterwards. So that we're, in my view, I don't think we would really be missing a lot of information if we don't attend. They're really more informative than anything else. They do provide an opportunity for feedback as they discuss proposed motions, etc., for the annual meeting. So it is valuable in that respect to be in attendance. But as far as the information that's provided, we can obtain it through other means.
All right.
Would it be appropriate for the engineering
have
that
to
would be
decide
appropriate,
today.
instead of having this discussion here, let's have the engineering committee. We really just heard about this yesterday for the first time. I mean, no, I know. But I think we can put it on December.
It's a good plan. Do we need to vote on this travel schedule?
Yeah, I think you can vote to approve all of it except for the Virgin Islands meeting.
Okay.
That could be
Well,
deferred.
the zero would be zero. Well, I guess that would.
It would
Yeah, we still have to vote to let you go. So, okay. Is there a motion that we accept the travel schedule as presented with the exception of the decision on sending to the NCEES meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any other discussion?
My discussion is that not because the engineering committee is going to study it wrong, but I think we need to make a position clearly why we're supporting the bill for this question. How we can get back to the issue that we have. So I will amend
So noted.
that. I should make sure we're not. Yes, I'm good, thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. John?
Very good. And I think your last item is application exam deadline dates. That's on page 160, which applies only to the PE and SC exams now. The rules state you have to establish the deadlines for these applications. So here they are. Each year we have to present these for your approval.
Do we need to make a motion
Yes.
for our approval? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a motion on the floor to accept the examination deadline dates for 2017?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to committee reports. Interior Design Committee could not meet because we didn't have any members. So the chairman of that committee assigned 2 new members. We have Catherine and Frank helping us out with reviews. So that was a quick one. We do need to get registrants up, and that's something everywhere I go, I ask people to please register. It's $5.83 a month. It's not going to knock them out. So anyway. All right. Mr. Parker, would you like to report on the Landscape Architecture Committee?
I'll make this short and sweet. The LA committee met. We really have no issues in front of us. We've had no complaints in front of us. Anyway, the Landscape Architecture Committee is no recommendations.
All right, thank you. Architect Committee.
Yes, we met, and we really only have one item that's important for this meeting, and that is to sign, this would be to sign a letter of understanding with respect to the mutual recognition agreement with Australia and New Zealand. That would be a motion, and this is almost identical, but it's similar to the one we signed with Canada.
Okay.
And the architects recommend that to the board.
Okay. We've heard a motion from the committee. It does not require a second. So is there any other discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other business, Rick?
That is it.
That is it.
Sorry.
Okay. Engineering Committee. Laura.
The engineering committee met, and there were some law, rule, and policy discussions, which Rick will go over, and were further discussed in that committee, and Rick will present that. Of course, we went to NCEES annual meeting, and that was discussed, and a couple of issues came up from that, but again, one that affected the law, rule, and policy, CEU committee. One interesting conversation was about outreach to employers about licensure, and Robert made the suggestion that we work with ACEC to kind of more broadly help be in discussion with employers about how to promote and get applicants ready for licensure. So that was a very good discussion. And we have one motion that we're going to make. It's the licensing the MOU that we've been discussing, we would like to go forward with that as written. We had looked at one modification and have decided to go forward with this one. So we'd like a motion to that.
Okay. So the engineering committee has presented a motion to do a mutual agreement with the country of Japan that does not require a second. Is there any more discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Laura. Now, did Ricky need to present something or? Okay. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
sorry, I should have brought in this comment on the enrollment thing. He's looking at this Japanese. I think we can reset our name over here. Good for this part of improvement, economic development.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are numerous Japanese companies in Tennessee, so let's hope this is a long-lasting, fruitful relationship for everyone. So, okay, laws and rules.
Yes, the Law and Rules Committee met yesterday, and we have 4 items we would like to present to the board for motion
Okay.
to consider.
Okay.
First item is to pursue a law change eliminating experience duration requirements for the architectural exam applicants and require simple completion of the IDP and AXP. Real quick justification on that is we currently have a 3-year period, and we would like to see it go along with the national IDP and AXP. So.
Okay. The Laws and Rules Committee have presented this motion. It does not require a second. Is there any other discussion?
Thank you. Item number 2, we'd like to direct legal to draft all proposed rule changes except for the change to the 1-year U.S. experience requirement and the change relative to graduate degrees earned concurrently with work experience.
Okay, there's a second motion. Is there any other discussion? Okay.
All right. Thank you. Item number 3, we would like to table adding the design competitions, RFPs, and RFQs policy to rules pending research by staff and legal for an opinion.
Okay. All right, the motion has been made. It does not require a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, number 4.
And our final item is to amend the bylaws to combine the publications and licensure outreach committees into one committee, which would be the outreach committee.
Okay. Does not require a second. Is there any other discussion?
Does it need to get bigger or smaller?
Depends on how many more people that don't show up to the meetings we add.
Stephen, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I think as far as the members, I think what we did was put the 2 together. So it's just one. It's one committee, but it's larger than.
Okay.
I think you're just adding one member.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a big change.
So the Laws and
A lot of
Rules
overlap.
Committee have presented 4 motions. It does not require a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, let's call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you.
All right, Grants and Higher Education Committee. That'd be me. We've had a discussion about expanding our grants amount, and it has been presented to the Assistant Commissioner. He wasn't warm and fuzzy about it, so he's going to get back with us. So we have a plan in place to potentially counteroffer, and so we are going to wait and see what happens. So. Well, we discussed, last year, $150,000, up to $500,000. And so, he wanted us to reduce our fees, and so I think the board agreed in February that we would keep our fee of $140 biannually. And so, if we do that, that's going to affect the grants money. So, I think as this board had been presented for our new members, we're all supportive of our grants program and helping our institutions to buy the equipment they need, to buy the furniture they need, and support the examination fees for the students. So we want to keep that on track. We're one of the few states in the United States that does that. And I think it's good that we're the leader and the trendsetter in that respect, because our higher education does not get more money. They have their budgets cut every year. So we are probably there are a few opportunities to get some of the extra things that they need. So I appreciate your all's support with this committee and my passion to help our students and our educators. So we will wait and see what John brings back to us.
I just want to officially say that I think it's been tremendous.
Yes. Well, I mean, just listening to him yesterday.
And the event yesterday, bringing everybody in, y'all did a great job at getting staff did a great job. But I sat next to two people who could not stop talking about grants and what it meant to them, and their presentations, reflecting of that. It's been tremendous.
You sat next to the Dean of Memphis, correct? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The first time we heard him speak, they did not have classroom furniture.
Yeah.
They were moved to a room, but they were not given any money for furniture for the students. That's deplorable. It really is. So, anyway. Okay. Stephen, publications, licensure outreach committee.
I have one motion, but maybe go over just a few things we talked about. Some of them have already been mentioned. Publication revision, John mentioned that the reference manual is under review by others at this point, and I guess the committee will hear the results of that at some point. Newsletter articles, Ricky volunteered to write a article with some assistance from Robert concerning
You can write it out.
Check his ring.
That was actually true. He wanted it, but he wanted to look at I think concerning experience and references on the PE application to encourage clarification. We talked a little bit about licensure promotion on campuses and just encourage members of the committee and also members of the board to go anytime you're asked to a school to talk to students. We talked about our meetings with the deans, and like John noted that I think we had 20 representatives, probably the largest that we've had since we've been doing this, so it was a success. One motion is to direct Mr. Coughlin to invite representatives from NCEES to attend a future board meeting. And that was somewhat in response to Philip's comment to encourage them to participate and subsidize the FE exams. So we thought, as we discussed that might, since they had already asked or volunteered to come to a future meeting, we thought we would invite them and do that face to face. So that's the one committee recommendation that resulted in a request for a motion.
Okay, in regard to the budget requirement, does that come out of their budget or our budget for the travel? If we invite them?
Oh, it'd be theirs.
Theirs, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They've got plenty of money.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion from the committee, and does it require a second? Is there any further discussion? Yes, Bill.
Madam Chair, I was thinking that in light of one of the things the outreach committee might want to consider, that, a lot of schools are coming up for ABAC. It would be a bad idea in the entire school location, invite the ABAC guy to come along. He will tell us what the training the schools are doing, what are some of the weaknesses that the schools are seeing. At one point in time, they were telling us that schools are not teaching public schools, not teaching the student how to interact with real people like us. So I think the school has overcome that. So I think I'd like to hear what the ABAC people say. So sometime in 2017, we should probably invite them to come participate on our meeting. Since we're going to invite NCW. Thank you.
Okay, Robert?
And since we're going to, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, John, but we're going to have this discussion partially with NCEES on their fees. Is it appropriate to ask some of the deans that are close by to come by and kind of give first-hand information on how that's impacting the students, or is that kind of like
It's a public meeting, anybody can.
Well, I just think,
Yeah,
I think
we can do that.
they can hear it from us, and that's kind of second hand, but when a dean says, hey, my students can't because of this, whether that makes any impact or not, I out of here, one from the boards committee.
If you did that, Robert, you want to make sure that you prepare just that's exactly what we want. That will be on the agenda for discussion. So we won't run time.
Okay. All right. You ready for me to? Okay. So Stephen has presented a motion to invite NCSS to our meeting at their expense to discuss the subsidizing the FE exam for the students. There's no second required. Are we having any other discussion? Okay. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Our last committee is, yes, Kevin?
I'd like to ask Stephen if it would be okay with him, and I don't know if I have to ask permission of the board to do that. But I said in a break, and maybe it was yesterday, but I said something to Casey about I've been active in ACDC in the past. Would it be good if I wrote an article for ACDC newsletter about my perspective as a board member or something? She said, great. And then I realized I'm sure there's protocol, so please help me.
Okay, protocol, you can write it, let John look at it. Ben will probably have to look at it, and then you can give it to Casey.
Stephen.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. I'll let her review the volunteer. Okay, Finance Committee. Yes, John.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Continuing education.
I just wanted to mention.
Did I skip one? I'm sorry.
But before we move on from publications and outreach, I failed to mention this at the committee meeting yesterday. We were so focused on other things, I guess, that I'm planning on developing a program for new registrants for next year. I don't know what time frame this would take place, but and of course it's pending further approvals, but a program aimed primarily at new registrants. Where we could just educate them about their responsibilities as a professional, use of the seal, and laws and rules, ethics, things of that nature. Maybe we could invite some representatives from the State Fire Marshal's office as well. Still got to develop that, but I would like to start something like that. Just we could provide PDHs. Not that we would present like their certificates during that, because we don't want to interfere with what the societies are already doing there, but just as really a continuing education event for them.
And there's a plans reviewer in Clarksville that would love to come too.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure. But Ohio does a program like that, and it was discussed at last year's NCSS meeting. I think it would be beneficial for us to do that. And also we could discuss, their responsibilities. If they're aware of violations, they need to make us advise the board of that. Because I think often they're not aware of their responsibility to do that, it seems. So I just wanted to mention that.
We can make it a video.
Yeah, we could video it
Yeah,
and post
make
it
it a
on the
video
website.
and
Yeah.
Have them sign an agreement that they watched it.
Yeah, sure.
Good idea. Since I skipped continuing education committee.
Hey, John. Hey, John. I have always contended that there's a lot of material to teach just a lot of people. When's the last time we actually taught 2 section persons? I'm an old professor, so this is what I like to do. And I think just looking at a lot of rules itself is a good way to do it. They don't actually make a test, let them take it and educate.
Good.
I look at it else, I like to give tests.
And pass.
Yes, 80%. But that's all I had on.
Frank, you're up.
Okay, the Continuing Education Committee met, and we had 3 or 4 points of discussion, one of which I'll have a motion on. And I'll start with kind of the architects first. Presently, the architects we have the option of our continuing education being considered for the year starting January 1st, and also for it to be during the continuing education period be considered maybe renewed. And what discussion we had, we might want to look at sundowning the part that allows you to renew, to make your CEUs 2-year period beginning and ending your renewal. Just make it first year. And that kind of, what that does is for people that are registered in multiple states, most of the other states, meaning that we've had with INCAR, have, you want to call it leveled up, so that everybody's renewing at the same time with continuing education. That's just a point of discussion. We might want to bring that up for people other than the people on the continuing education committee to review, and I'm not sure what the meaning for that is. But just to put it out there and see if that's people other than us think that's a good idea.
We could seek public comment on it. We've had an open forum on the decoupling issue, I think 2 or 3 years ago. We did that, but it wasn't for rulemaking. We just asked people to come in and address the board on that specific issue. So we could do that with this issue.
We could include with that the other issues that we discussed. There are 2 or 3 points that we might include with that related to the engineering continuing education. I know one point of discussion is like the architects now, the continuing education that we require must be health safety and welfare. There was a discussion of the engineering the same way. That might get some kickback, but that needs other comments. And then the other thing is carryover, whether we should allow carryover of continuing education from previous years. There was some thought we'd like to eliminate that, but again, I think that requires some feedback from the general public. And then the issue that we're going to bring motion forward on is changing the engineering and the landscape. By the way, landscape architects also. Changing the engineering and landscape architects continuing education period to allow it to be from January in our 2-year period, rather than at the renewal period, but allow both at this point, and maybe in the future change that. That's part of the public discussion. So bring that motion forward. I'd like to move, or from the committee comes a motion to draft a rule change to allow engineers and landscape architects the option to earn and report CE hours on a calendar year basis. That calendar year started.
Okay. All right, we have a motion from the committee. We do not require a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Engineers, are y'all good with everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to show, don't decide that.
Open for rule.
Exactly. So you're going to each meeting and the next. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how you handle it.
If they're going to draft a rule, then I guess it's going to need to go to the House Rules Committee. Great. Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. That take care of it. Right. Okay.
Question you.
Ricky.
One comment about something that Frank touched on, the health, safety, welfare aspect. We talked about how right now, as far as engineering goes, about half our hours, the majority of the hours need to be health, safety, welfare, so it's 13 out of 24. The question brought up is really our definition of health, safety, welfare in our
our guidelines on the website would include everything. There's really nothing that would be considered health, safety, welfare. And that's a little out of bounds with other states as far as my experience. They say that there's some things like business classes and learning program software, that sort of thing, is not health, safety, welfare. And whereas our list and our guidelines include all that. So I think that should be thrown in as we discuss this. Not only how many hours need to be health, safety, welfare, but how we define health, safety, welfare.
Good point.
Okay, thank you, Ricky. Okay, final committee is finance.
Okay, the finance committee, if you all go to your iPad, check number 48. Okay, now on check 48, if you look at the summarization page from staff, Mr. John and Mr. Grant. Looking at revenue expenses, I think a couple of things to highlight, especially on the expenses. Last bullet on expenses, you need to know our reserve, cumulative reserve, right about $1.6 million, slightly more. That's where we draw our money off. The year-to-date reserve is about $88,000. And then also on the revenue side, you need to try and know that the reason why you saw the decrease in terms of the revenue is because we were encouraging people to renew ahead of time before we got a new system. So most of the income came from the last quarter of fiscal year. So that's and then the rest from tech 49 to 58 is all the breakdown in comparison. If you have any questions, glad to answer on behalf of the finance committee. Okay, that's the financial data. The other thing is we talk about the allocation of grants. I echo what Susan said, that we're going to wait for the assistant commissioner to get back with us. And we have asked, the grants committee has asked to raise the grant money from $350,000 to $500,000. And I think the reaction was that it might be such a high jump, so we're going to wait to come back. So that would be my comment. We went outside, it was a lovely day. Any question? I don't believe we need any motion on this. No.
Thank you, Dylan. Any other comments on committee reports this time? Okay. John, general discussion of future plans, action on items, and I think we have some signatures we need to do. So.
Oh, yeah. Did y'all? Oh, there is one item that y'all haven't done. This would be, I guess, a new item that's apparently didn't make it on this agenda. It's on the one I said. Oops. Sorry. It's the emeritus certificates for Hal Balthrop, Jerry Headley, and Bill Lockwood. Yeah, it should have been under new business. Sorry.
All right.
It didn't make it on this.
Do we have a motion on the floor to approve emeritus certificates?
So moved.
For Hal Balthrop, Bill Lockwood, and Jerry Headley.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad I noticed that wasn't on the agenda.
All right, now, do you have a pen you want everybody to use? Yes. She has a pen. That's an archival pen.
It's been around.
Yes, I have. So the intent is to present these in December at our luncheon, which is one of our other discussion items, right, John?
I'm sorry?
Our luncheon in December. We're going to present these.
Yes, that's correct.
And
we'll invite them to the December meetings.
We'll invite them to the December meeting and the luncheon. Okay. And so we'll present them at that time.
Who's organizing the luncheon?
You are. I'm nominating Philip Lim. Second.
Philip will have us eating ramen noodles over behind you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Frank, since he's vice chair while I sign these certificates.
Frank will take over.
Mr.
place for the officers and the rest of you.
What are you turning? We're not so special.
Discussion about who's
Karaoke.
Karaoke. Yeah, luncheon.
I think Laura Reinbold.
Make a motion, we appoint Philip Lim to take up the money for this and to also make sure he organizes for Germantown Cafe in line with what we have done in the past.
Somebody second.
Thank you, Philip.
Part of the board meetings?
Okay, so,
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
is this a motion? That was unofficial.
And do we have a second? Okay, now there's discussion, Philip.
Okay, only thing I want the staff to plug the year. For those planning board members, we have always found ways to appreciate our staff. I will tell you, I cannot tell you how much our staff do behind the scenes to make our job so easy. And actually, I had to give credit to Hal Martin several years back. He said, we're going to do something for the staff.
Yeah.
So we have always moved the December meeting from the first week. So we conclude at Thursday afternoon. We usually mosey over to the Germantown Cafe. It's a big room for us. And I usually ask the staff, I usually tell the board members so between $50 to $75 each person. So just bring your cash, I'll let you know every time. That's to cover the staff portion of it. The society members can come, but I won't be paying for Casey. I like it.
That's been a theme this weekend.
So, and again,
Nothing personal.
nothing personal. Casey, I like it. But so it's always a good time, and I think that we don't say thank you enough to them. It's staff out. This is one way of saying thank you. So I just want to. So someday when I wish out, my term's getting shorter. Someday when I rotate off, and I'll fill them will take over. I understand. And I happen to collect the money. I don't know why I'm in the money bag guy.
Brown bag.
Yeah.
Brown bag. Bag man.
Good.
Thank you, Philip. What other action items or future plans discussions do we have?
One thing I was going to mention is about the hotel arrangements for board meetings in Nashville, that we've recently learned that we can basically set it up with certain hotels that accept the state rate, where they can just bill the board for your rates in lieu of you paying and then getting reimbursed. So we're going to try to set that up for the December meeting, I guess with the Holiday Inn that we've been using, where they can just invoice us.
Can you negotiate breakfast with that, Phil?
But anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
That's good news.
Is the Hermitage on that list?
Yeah, the Omni.
That'd be nice.
No.
So now we get an ID badge for parking, and they're going to pay for our room instead of us paying for it. That's good. So then it's just mileage and per diem and $50 for being at the meetings.
What's it take to get a handicap
Okay, any other items, John?
John, this pen's running dry.
Uh-oh.
It is. I've got more pens. We can take care of that.
We need to do
Right
it
now?
now.
Today?
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, if there's no other,
I can get it. Yeah, we're done.
we're done?
Yeah.
All right. Do I have a motion to call the meeting to be adjourned?
So moved.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Safe travel.
Motion carried.
I gotta go.